Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. This episode is sponsored by Boston Scientific and its educational website on erectile dysfunction, edcure.com. One study estimated that more than 50% of men over the age of 40 have some degree of erectile dysfunction, which can be frustrating and confusing. Go to edcure.com to find information on erectile dysfunction and treatment options, including long-term treatment options offered by Boston Scientific. Boston Scientific does not endorse any statements or opinions expressed during this episode. Welcome back to Between the Sheets. We are going to have a fun conversation today. We have Sara Perry here. She is the owner of Haven Space Coaching. She is a somatic sex educator and also a sexological bodyworker. So I'm really excited to have Sara here today and provide us with a new perspective and different things that we can learn and enhance our sexuality. So thank you, Sara, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. Yeah, folks, my name is Sara Perry, like Steph just mentioned. I live in Houston, and that's where I have my private practice, but I also coach people virtually, and I do talks, and I write kids' books, and I do all kinds of stuff that is related to sexuality and sexual wellness.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How did you kind of get into this work?
Honestly, I went back to school when I was like 30 and I
Mm-hmm.
decided to study what I thought was the most interesting thing in the world, and that was sexuality. And at first I thought I would study psychology because there's all these different angles that we can use to look at sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly found that, especially in the US, psychology is really pathologizing. So it like tells us what's wrong with us or what our kind of what our diagnosis is. And by default, having a practice when you practice psychology, therapy, anything kind of clinical for insurance purposes, you have to have a diagnosis and a treatment
Mm-hmm.
plan. And to me, that seemed like very reductionist. Like sexuality doesn't exist on this plane where something that you're coming to talk about is an illness, right? Actually, even
Right.
inside of trauma, I find that a lot of us have all these behaviors that may be considered quote unquote, what is the word, like problematic or even maladaptive. But I find that no, this is literally adaptation, right? So if we've
Mm-hmm.
survived, if this is a tool that we have, there's a reason we're using this tool. And I think that's one of the things that sets the practice of somatic sex education apart from other forms.
Mm-hmm. So I love that there's this different side of sexuality that you have been able to explore. Tell our listeners what the heck somatic is.
Okay, somatic, well, the soma is the kind of union between mind, body, and spirit, where we have this thought in our minds, and it's been taught to us that those are separate, distinct things. The soma is everything at once. And so when we practice somatics, what we're actually doing is trying to create that unity inside of the sensations that we feel in our bodies and how we're interpreting them
Mm-hmm.
in our minds, as opposed to being like, this is something I have to be really rational about. It's like, no, we don't have to be really rational. We actually have to be very aware, very in tune, right? Not so much in your
Mm-hmm.
head, but paying attention to what's happening inside of your entire body. So when we practice somatic sex education, one of the things that we look for is, what is my body telling me? How is it showing up? What shape is it taking on right now? And what information can I get from that about what that means for what I want, how I want to move forward, how I want to slow down? And it's really kind of getting down to, at its core, the messages that live inside of our skin, especially like from our ancestors, from
Mm-hmm.
our techniques, from our adaptations. And they show up in a way that is a lot more nuanced than what we can rationalize. So we say that There are 3 ways that you can heal. One is from the mind up, and that is
Hmm.
things like psychology, psychiatry, right? Like, you can rationalize your way into things. Another
Uh-huh.
way is from the arms out, which would be community, group therapy, sometimes, like, literally being in community without you having to do anything or talk about anything can be super healing and empowering for us.
Hmm.
And then the last one is from the feet down into the ground, and that is somatics. That is everything that exists inside of us that's already moving. How tuning into that, paying attention to that can really heal, can really reconnect us.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it really is important for our sexual health too. I mean, there's a lot of different things that grounding and looking at our psychology and biology and all these other things that are interconnected, they can help in many areas of life. But specifically in the sexuality area, it really is, like you said, it's very healing, it's very eye-opening. It really helps us get in tune with our wants and our desires in that moment. And so I think one of my favorite things about it is that it really helps you connect with the fact that every time is not the same. You're not going to want the same thing. You're not going to be in the same space every single time. That faster and harder, slower and softer, more sensual, more whatever. Every time is different. And you should be able to celebrate and acknowledge that within your body rather than be like, what's wrong with me that I can't want the same thing? Like what worked for me yesterday isn't working today. It actually allows you to celebrate that.
Absolutely. That's what you're touching on is so important because, and I see this with clients on a weekly basis, we are constantly changing and we are constantly
Hmm.
aging, right? So, like, there's this big
Hmm.
rhetoric that we tell people that puberty is this time that your body changes. Like, what are we talking about? We have to be teaching kids your body doesn't stop changing, right? And it's not like there's
Hmm.
just these giant events. It's not just, puberty and then menopause. There are all of these micro changes
Hmm.
that are happening every single day. And they're dependent on so many things like how many glasses of water did you have? Or, if you are
Hmm.
traveling, if your schedule's off, like our bodies are so delicate. And it absolutely
Hmm.
affects the way we show up and the way our little hormones are showing up and our sense of touch is
Hmm.
showing up. So, of course, we have completely different sexual experiences every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's missed a lot, like you said, the water intake and also sleep. Sleep does not
Mhm.
get enough attention for how important it is to balancing so many activities in our body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like to talk
Yeah.
about also the fact that right now we have this big push in sex ed for the places that have sex ed because I'm in Texas and we don't have sex ed in
Mhm.
Texas, which is bananas. In fact, they actually
Yep.
put on the primary ballot to ban sex ed from K to 12, like constitutionally
Oh my
inside of
gosh.
Texas to ban it. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What is happening? Right. But,
Yeah.
anyways, that's the world we live in, right? The people who do have sex ed, though, we have this push towards teaching consent. Teach consent, 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 consent. And
Hmm.
I love that. It's so great, right? Like the intention
Hmm.
is fruitful. But what
Yeah.
is consent, right? Not only is consent
Mm.
super nuanced, there's actually a book called Sex and Harm in the Age of Consent that is brilliant about this
Mm.
specific subject. Like, how do we define consent? How do you achieve it? Because
Hmm.
by definition, once you're aroused, you're no longer able to make decisions for yourself. Like, aroused people are
Hmm.
not making rational choices, right? So it's a
Yeah.
really complicated, nuanced thing. The interesting part is when we talk about consent, we never teach people, how do you know what you want? Like, how do you self
Mm.
identify? You could, in theory, like something. I mean, think about all your wild fantasies. That doesn't mean that that's what you actually want to do. That's just, it lives in a
Hmm.
part of your brain where there's like imagination and exciting things, right? But that doesn't mean that's
Hmm.
what you want. You don't necessarily want to get like railed against a train or something, you know? The
Yeah.
interesting part, though, is that how are we teaching our youth and ourselves to identify what it is they want, if not through
Hmm.
paying attention to your body? If we're not
Right.
teaching somatics, we're never teaching consent because we have no clue what the hell we want.
Mm.
And of course, like you
Right.
were saying, that
Yeah.
changes. Just because I want
Hmm.
something today doesn't mean that's what I want tomorrow or the rest of my life. And you can easily have a thing that you want to try, and then you curate everything so that you're able to try it. And then once it happens, you're like, well, that was terrible. We are never doing that again.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
which is
Yes.
completely okay.
And you have to give yourself permission to be okay with that.
Yeah. And honestly, I
Yeah.
think tuning into your own sense of curiosity and humor allows you to explore stuff in a way that doesn't feel like a commitment. Like, let's just play along with this
Mm.
thing like it's a game, like with childlike curiosity, right? It makes that
Yeah.
exploration so much lighter.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think, you touched on this at the beginning about, the safety within ourselves. And I think that is also with our partner. It's a lot easier for me to be willing to explore and try these different things. And it's a lot easier for me to give you consent when I feel safe, when I feel like I can trust you that if things aren't going well and we decide this needs to stop for today, that you're actually going to stop and respect my boundaries. So that safety factor that comes with it, and a lot of that comes from knowing yourself, which is, getting into the somatics and all of that. I think that is such a game changer for people when they can be with a partner who allows them to feel safe, but once they've learned that safety within themselves too.
Absolutely. One of the things that is
Mm.
important inside of spaces of consent, sexual negotiations, that kind of dynamic is your revocability has to be very welcome.
Mhm,
It just has to be.
mhm,
When you're in a situation that is going to have some kind of negative repercussion when you either change your mind or redirect, that's not a safe
mhm,
space, right? And it actually isn't consent.
mhm,
When there's a punishment for you saying no, or I don't feel like it anymore, or move a little to the left, even if that punishment is passive aggressive, even if the punishment is like spending 3 days with someone acting weird around you, that is not a safe
mhm.
place to explore stuff. That's why I tell people engage that side of you that's curious and playful. Because in those spaces of
Mhm.
playful curiosity, it almost feels like there's more permission to
Mhm.
randomly pivot to something different. Of course,
Yeah.
there's like a million little lesson plans that I do, but one of them is this really cool concept by a mentor of mine, Corinne Diashuk. She's one of the teachers at the Institute for Somatic Sex Education.
Mm.
But her concept is about the spectrum of response and how we don't have just a yes, maybe, and no. There's all these
Mhm,
little kind of like negotiation zones of different kinds of yeses. I teach this
mhm,
to all of my clients and we go through it with like graphs and crap like that, right? But the interesting part is that there's these negotiation zones that are a yes and a yes but,
mm,
similar to a no and a no but. But these like the ability to add an and or but to something you're asking for really changes how much you're like titrating it into what's your ideal
mm,
experience. So I tell clients to engage in that. Like think about what it looks like to be like, do you want to go on a date? Yes,
mm,
and can we get home early so I can get to work on time tomorrow without being tired, right? It's such
mm,
a minor difference, but what we're doing is actively participating in negotiating what would make it best for us. And
mhm.
obviously, that's just a date, but sexually, right?
Sure.
You can negotiate.
Mhm,
If you don't want to do something, you can use this no but to redirect without it feeling like a rejection. We could say, no,
mhm,
I don't feel like doing this specific position, but I've been thinking about this other one. So the
mhm.
rejection is a replacement. And
Yeah.
that's easier for our partners to accept in those moments than like a hard no.
Yeah. And I think if you practice it in the situations like a date, like something that's, a little less intimate, maybe a little less pressure involved, then you're going to be better at doing that when it does come to those intimate moments where you're in the mood and you're in that moment and you're like, okay, no, but I'm okay with this, and I think if you can get those practices in other situations that are a little less, I don't want to say heated in a bad way, but heated because you're so aroused and turned on and, that it helps you. You're better at it if you practice it in non-intense situations.
Absolutely. We also teach
Mhm.
that we are really unlikely to use a safe word, right? Like it's
Mhm.
cute to have a safe word, and that's like what society tells us we need to do to be really
Mhm.
conscientious, right? But psychology says we don't actually use it because it's too harsh of a stop.
Yeah.
And most of the time, when we're
Mm.
in the
Mhm.
middle of something hot, we're not trying to just put a complete stop to it. We're just saying, like, oh, that was
Yeah.
weird. Right. So what we
Yeah.
tell people to do is some type of traffic light system, like to go into like that's a
Mm.
yellow zone. But even that I'm like, we can't create language that we have to throw in. We have to use something that's
Yeah.
already in our vocabulary. So, like, I don't say
Hmm.
yellow when I'm talking to someone
Right.
sexually. Like, it's not part of my dirty talk repertoire, you know? So,
Right.
it's good if you're actually throwing in words that you would use, like
Hmm.
slow it down or stay right there, right? Like a phrase that you would
Hmm.
already use. And then talk to your
Hmm.
partner about that and be like, hey, when I say this, this is what I'm asking for. This is what I'm telling you. I'm in the yellow zone, right?
Hmm.
And I'm a big believer in not shifting things 100% because we won't do it. We don't like
Mm.
create new patterns and behaviors overnight just because we thought we could, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier to start throwing in things that we're already kind of using and slowly move into, oh, this actually becomes a better way to negotiate our sexual experiences.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like after the fact, when you're, later after care or the next day at dinner, and you can say, when we were doing this, and I said, I need you to go a little slower, or I need you to do the left side more than the right, whatever, that's my yellow zone. And this is, how we can compromise. I love taking that out of the moment and having that conversation at another time. Because then the next time you are in the moment, you've already had that conversation. It's easier to move through if you are putting up that yellow language. Like you said, you're using words that you would normally use, but they mean yellow or they mean red. They mean let's change. Let's switch things.
Absolutely.
It doesn't always have to be like that hard stop if you can get those conversations, because then like, okay, I need to slow down. That means for me, like, okay, we've had this conversation. That means we're getting near to the stop zone. So let me pull back. All right, what do we need to do? And it kind of brings you back into the choices and the redirection versus, like you said, like stop, red light, whatever. Like that, it's such an abrupt end that you're just like, holy shit, what just happened?
Right. And it's hard not to take it personal, right? So that's what happens. Like, we don't want to
Hmm.
have these disruptions that end up fracturing the relationship in some way. Like, we want people
Hmm.
to feel safe. We want our partners to feel
Hmm.
heard and safe and comfortable. But also, we want to feel like
Yeah.
we're not horrible people. So that's what happens, right? It's like
Hmm.
if you say no to
Right.
someone, then they're like, "Oh my god, I have been aggressive." Right? And no one
Hmm.
feels good in that space. So
Yeah.
we try to like make sure we're taking care of each other's emotions. So we tend not to say
Hmm.
no and then endure situations that we wouldn't necessarily want to be in. Right. So, like,
Yeah.
all of that communication, like you were saying, is so good to have before or after in a space that is
Hmm.
not as heated, as you put it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because then you can have some really clear conversations. But at the end of the
Hmm.
day, I think it's important to pay attention to the fact that being told no
Hmm.
means that you're a safe place, right? We don't say no
Yeah.
in situations where we're not safe. So I have a peer that
Right.
says, if you tell me no, what does she say? She says, if you tell me no, I will take it personal. It is the biggest
Mm.
compliment that you can give me is
Yeah.
to trust me with your no. So
Yeah.
we need
I
to
love that.
change the way, yeah, it's beautiful. We need to change the way we accept
Hmm.
no's from people and think, what a freaking compliment that I am so
Hmm.
safe that this
Yeah.
partner thinks that they can tell me no and I'll be okay.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And this is also caveat here. If you are in pain or something is just absolutely not right, you're not going forward, absolutely do the hard stop, red, no, stop,
Totally.
whatever you need to do. But we're saying, like, in a situation where you're just kind of like, this is getting close to my boundaries, that's where we're using this language and things like that. I just want to throw that caveat out there. If you're not enjoying something and it's really bad for you, please by all means say stop.
Totally. Absolutely. And all of this, of course, is within the realm of like a consensual dynamic because
Yes.
if you're surviving an episode, then your body's going to show up however it shows up. You're not going to be
Hmm.
thinking about language. You're just going to, and by
Correct.
the way, all ways to show up and survive situations are valid and
Hmm.
useful for whatever they were useful for. I was on a podcast last week and we were discussing trauma. And a lot of people, their bodies respond in a way that they can't rationalize.
Hmm.
And we come from a society where we try
Hmm.
constantly to rationalize, and we almost like create this inner dialogue that
Mhm,
punishes us for not having done something different. When at the end of the day, we're here, we
mhm,
survived, right? And so
yep,
I want to name too that Whatever happens if you're in a situation that you didn't want, even if that situation was something that started as consensual,
Mhm.
just quiet those negative thoughts into like, no, no, no. This was a survival moment and we can take that, move forward, and be okay in other ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've heard of people who were, sexually assaulted or raped or anything like that and had an orgasm and they feel awful
Mhm.
because this was a terrible situation. Why did I still have an orgasm? Well, you
Mhm.
don't really necessarily have control over that. Your body you're just because you were in that fear state, your body responded to the way it was being touched and you don't have control over that because you went
Right.
into survival mode and just like what do I need to do to stay alive?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I work a lot with clients with sexual trauma. I
Mhm.
also work with clients with trauma that they don't remember. So they'll
Mm.
come to me with like a specific behavior that we can assume is a pattern based on some type of sexual trauma,
Mhm.
but they don't have specific memories of something
Mm.
happening to them. And that work cannot be done in psychology. It
Yeah.
cannot. We have therapies that help people like kind of try to remember things. The difficult part is that our brains, being brilliant as they are,
Mhm.
shuts down the part that remembers things when it's in full on survival mode, right?
Mhm.
So when we are trying to, I'm going to put it in quotations, like a recall
Mhm.
those lost memories, there's no way for us to know because the memory was not in there, right?
Yeah.
So our brains under distress like that, like trying to
Mhm.
recall something that isn't there, will create new memories.
Mm.
Okay. It's called memory formation. So the difficult part is that are you actually remembering the incident? First of all, is that
Mhm.
helpful? Is it helpful to
Right.
remember? Then, secondly, how do you know that that's what actually happened and it's not
Mm.
a memory formation situation, which is valid? And when we
Yeah.
do brain scans, which I think this is fascinating, we do these studies on people with dementia.
Mhm.
When we do brain scans, memory recall is tapping into the hippocampus, which is the
Mhm.
area responsible for memory.
Yeah.
It's not tapping into the area responsible for making up lies.
Mhm.
So we know for a fact that people are recalling information. It's just wrong information,
Yeah.
right? Things that never happened. So in somatics, we kind of bypass all of that because the messages in your body are enough to resolve those patterns.
Mm.
You don't have to remember. You don't have to re traumatize or create new memories that may be traumatizing in a
Mhm.
different way. It's not a requisite for
Mhm.
this kind of work to either narrate something or to re experience it.
Mm.
Somatics is this very super simple way of processing through your parasympathetic nervous system those emotions
Mhm.
in a way that doesn't demand that you recount it over and
Yeah.
over like a lot of therapy does. So if there are any listeners out there who find it too painful to go see a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. And this can be for any kind of trauma, not just
Mhm.
sexual trauma. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be something that you remember, right?
Mm.
But it feels too overwhelming. Try to find a somatic practitioner or go into somatics on your own
Mhm.
because you don't need a practitioner to do somatic work. It's inside of your own body.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I think it's so important to empower people like what you just said. Like, you can do this. You can do the exercises. You can read and learn and watch videos of practitioners and things like that if you don't have one in your area or something. It's so important to feel empowered that I can do something about the way that I am feeling, the way that I'm reacting to these situations. I love that about somatics.
It's incredible. And honestly, it's a great time in our like world culture because there are so many creators right now.
Hmm.
There are so many videos online. I have some guided videos for like somatic exploration, but there
Oh,
are hundreds all over
hmm.
the internet and they're free. And somatics is not painful.
Yeah.
So the barrier to access is so low, you know?
Yeah.
Like so many therapies, like even going to work out, you're like, "Oh, I have to
Right.
go work out," right? This is not that kind of thing. It's do I have 10 minutes to sit and pay attention?
Hmm.
And if you have the 10 minutes, huge privilege, right?
Right.
But if you have it, it's so easy to access, so easy to tap into and go back to your regular life without having to like put yourself back together,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Yep. I love that. What are a couple simple tips that you can give people to maybe try a somatic exercise themselves?
Somatic body scans are a great way to start,
Okay.
but our brains will distract us because
Okay.
it's a lot of information. Yeah. So we're really used to not paying attention to what our
Hmm.
body is feeling. And I like to think of sensation as different than touch. And when we talk
Okay.
about our five senses, we talk about touch,
Hmm.
but touch feels like from the hands out, right?
Yes.
It doesn't feel like sensing what's happening in your body. Like if you pay
Hmm.
attention to maybe your grumbly tummy, is that
Hmm.
touch? I don't know. I kind of think it's a whole other sense.
Yeah.
And I find that I have clients that have mobility issues. I have quadriplegic clients and paraplegic clients, and they have a sense of the sensations in their body,
Hmm.
even if they don't have touch.
Yeah.
So to me, those are different senses.
Hmm.
So, a good exercise to do is to pay attention to a couple of things that are happening in your body or on your skin.
Okay.
Attention inward, though. I don't want you to use your senses to put attention outward, which is
Hmm.
also a grounding exercise. But for this exercise, we're going to think about things like pay attention to the weight of the fabric on your skin.
Mm.
Take a
Okay.
second to feel what it feels like to have hair follicles. You can feel the tips of your hair touching your skin, right? Um, you can pay attention to what it feels like to have a tongue, have it fill the space of your mouth. You can pay attention to what it feels like to have weight,
Mm.
to have the weight of your body holding you down against the earth, maybe against a chair. Those are all things that are happening all the time.
Hmm.
They're here all of the time, and we are not paying attention.
Yeah, not at all.
So, not at all, because we don't have to, right? Because
Right.
we're so busy with other stuff. But just doing things like this helps us start creating those neural pathways to deepening sensation and
Hmm.
deepening touch. And the people that practice somatics, because it is a practice, it never ends,
Hmm.
they are quicker to feel things with more depth.
Okay.
All
That makes
things.
sense.
That makes sense, right? You're telling your brain, pay attention to
Hmm.
this. It's important.
Hmm.
And you can do it as you're laying in bed at night. You can pay attention to what it feels like to be in your comfy sheets,
Hmm.
right? To have
Yep.
like maybe socks on your feet and you wiggle your toes. Like just tuning back into sensation, that is somatics.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
love that.
simple, right?
Yeah, so simple. I love that. And it's something that you can do anywhere.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking, all these people traveling right now. We're recording this in March when TSA is not being funded right now and all these things. And I was just looking at the airport lines and they're 3 and 4 hours long. And I'm sitting there thinking, these people, I hope they are taking time to breathe. I hope they are taking time to feel themselves while they're waiting in line for so long, because otherwise we are going to have some enraged people around here. And I just think you can do it anywhere. I mean, go in the public restroom if you're feeling a little out of your sorts and be like, okay, like you said, like, how does my tongue feel? How does my, clothing feel? You can do it anywhere and really regain that grounding.
Absolutely. There's so much. I mean, we're just, at the tip of the iceberg, but there's an institute that I have not been a student of, but I am in the dojo. It's a thing they do every
Hmm.
month. It's a 1 hour online free thing from the Strozzi Institute, that Strozzi
Okay.
Institute online. Again, I'm not a student, but their programs are all about somatics. I
Mm.
will say the biggest difference between Strozzi and any kind of like somatic sex education work is that they never talk about the genitals. And I'm like,
Mm.
your genitals are very much something you can be aware of at any moment. Like if you
Yes.
really want to do a somatic exercise, you can be like, what is my pussy feeling right now?
Right.
Right?
Right.
And it's really easy to like focus attention there
Mm.
because we by nature like have a lot of sensation in our
Yeah.
genitals. Strozzi never talks about genitals. They're all like,
Interesting.
what does it feel like in my chest? But for a lot of people that are not woo woo like me, for example, it's an easier access
Yeah.
than let's talk about sex. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And it's unfortunate because so much of our society still doesn't want to talk about sex.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
that's why we're here, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Tell me, how does body work come into play and what people are really good clients for that?
Okay, sexological body work is in kind of the gray area of sex work.
Mhm.
Okay. We do define ourselves as sex workers. The interesting part is that the work that we do is not super different than the work of maybe a pelvic floor therapist.
Mhm.
Legally, though, gynecologist, a pelvic floor therapist, they can touch you because it doesn't bring you pleasure.
Mhm.
That is the benchmark.
'Kay.
So when you go to a pelvic floor therapist, they can get you from pain to zero, but
Yeah.
they cannot get you from zero to pleasure,
'Kay. Yep.
which I think is insane, obviously. Like, we want to feel good. We don't want to just not have pain,
Right.
right? Our work is in the zero to pleasure. Our work
Okay.
is actually in the pain to pleasure because
Mhm.
we don't have a limit. Our limit
Okay.
is what our client wants to achieve. Okay.
Okay.
The reason that you would work with a sexological body worker, then there's so many reasons, but the main one is that the practitioner doesn't need anything from you. The
Mm.
things that you want to explore and practice are about you. They're not about your connection between two people. It's not dyadic. Okay.
Mhm.
I don't need to receive anything from my client. By that, I mean, my boundaries are already met, right? If I've
Mhm.
invited someone to be a client in this realm, it's already someone that I've been doing a lot of talk coaching with. We have similar language. We have a relationship with each other that I know is not them taking something from me. They're not
Mhm.
consuming me in that moment. What I am is of service,
Mhm.
like I'm an extension of something that they would do to themselves
Okay.
with my hands, right?
Mhm.
That allows people to explore things that they wouldn't be able to explore with a partner because you
Okay.
have to take care of a partner.
Right.
You have to be worried about a partner. You have to be worried about their emotions. You have to be worried about their comfort level. And in this dynamic, I am trusted to keep the boundaries,
Mhm.
right? So we negotiate all the boundaries ahead of time. There's a few practices that are like within our code of conduct, okay?
Mhm.
One is I am always clothed. A practitioner is always clothed. It is only one-way touch. So I will
Mhm.
only be giving touch. No one touches me.
'Kay.
And the last one is that we use gloved hands for internal touch.
Okay.
And that's for sanitation, right?
Yeah.
I will say that is inside of the code of conduct for our certification.
Mhm.
There's one exception to gloved hands for internal touch, and that is people who have had some type of medical trauma.
Mm.
Okay. If you have had a traumatic childbirth, for example,
Mhm.
and there were gloves involved in that, that can be super triggering to a person.
Mm. Mhm.
So we are actively working in harm reduction.
Mhm.
So, absolutely, what feels comfortable to a person's skin is really a priority,
Yeah.
right? And we are constantly working to like move that needle towards what would make this better? What would make
Mm.
this better? Because it's not a question we're asking ourselves.
Mhm.
When you're working with a practitioner, that practitioner is telling you, come back to your body. Come
Mhm.
back to your body. I'm noticing people's breathing, right? When they're focused on what they're feeling, and I'm helping them achieve a sensation that they want, and they get distracted. Like I was saying,
Mm.
you'll get distracted if you're doing these
Yeah.
somatic practices because your brain needs a moment of distraction to funnel in the information. It's
Mhm.
just like digestion, right? It has to take a second to go down. So
Mhm.
you get distracted and then you come back. Well, my job is to be like, come back to your body, come back to your breath. What would make this better?
Mhm.
So we have this constant narrative. It's not like when you're receiving a massage, for example, you're very
Mhm.
passive. You're just laying
Yeah.
there. Really, the practitioner is guiding how they want to touch you. In
Mhm.
fact, a bunch of times you can say, I have this pain in my neck, and then they're still doing a full body massage. And
Right.
then they spend maybe an extra 5 minutes on your neck, right?
Mhm.
In this situation, it's always guided by the client.
Mm.
So it seems like a weird dynamic. I get that. There is a lot of magic in knowing that someone's holding a container that is safe enough for you to explore a thing.
Mhm.
And that when you are in a state of negotiation, because we get really aroused and we negotiate, right?
Okay.
And people sometimes will try to negotiate up from what they said they were comfortable with. Then I'm like, I'm holding the container and I'm not
Mhm.
aroused. So I know that I can say, I'm going to remind you that we made an agreement about this and you're
Mhm.
trusting me to keep that agreement. So we're going to we'll talk about this after. But in this
Yeah.
session, we're going to stick to our original agreement, right?
Okay.
I'm also there to remind people to not go into consuming mode. There's another
Mm,
concept we talk about where some of the role that we're very used to taking sexually is the role of the taker. We are the
mhm.
person that is doing the activity, we are the action taker,
Okay.
and it's for our benefit. So that's the way we think about, for example, pornography,
Mhm.
right? We are consuming pornography and it's benefiting us. We're getting aroused from it.
Yeah.
But it is in a kind of like a vampire type of dynamic, right? We're taking that energy into our bodies.
Mhm.
So in this role of sexological body work, I'm not available to be taken from.
Mhm.
You don't get to take from me. That's not
Yeah.
the dynamic we're engaging in. I am being of service, but the gift is for you,
Mhm.
right? And you're more passive. That role of what we call accepting, when you're just
Mhm.
kind of a more passive receiver of pleasure, that is an extremely difficult role for
Hmm.
people to get into. And again, of course, this is like months and months and months of conversations, and people
Yeah.
understand these minor dynamic shifts.
Mhm.
And it's kind of hard to, in a 30-minute conversation, explain it to people on a podcast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to really differentiate the nuance between consuming someone versus accepting something that's
Mhm.
happening to your body, right? Like
Yeah.
one is more active, one's more passive. And
Yeah.
those things are exercises in the realm of pleasure that we can receive.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some things, or I don't know if it's issues or desires or what the right word is, you'll tell me, that people are coming to you and after therapy and such, you're like, we really need to do some body work.
Very often I see, for example, I'll see a lot of men who have what I call discordant ejaculation. So
Okay.
either they come too fast or too
Hmm.
slow based on what they want.
Right.
I don't use the term premature ejaculation because we have patterns of behavior. And most of us grew up in homes where masturbation was not either allowed or talked about.
Yep.
It certainly wasn't comfortable, let's
Yeah.
say that. And so we learned from a young age to achieve orgasm very quickly
Hmm.
and quietly.
Yes.
And then when we get to a point that we're sharing our bodies, then we're like, I can't believe that this happened so fast and so quietly,
Right. Right.
you know?
Yes.
But it's like, well, yeah, because you trained yourself,
Hmm.
right? You were the marathon, like the quick sprint runner.
Right. Right.
Right. So for me, this is just a pattern. But usually it's a super fast fix when we go over that concept of taking and accepting that I
Hmm.
was referring to in bodywork. Because when you shift your own dynamic and you're not kind of taking on this consumer energy, your ejaculation changes
Hmm.
very quickly because of that shift in your attention.
Yeah.
It's completely different and literally in one exercise. Usually
Hmm.
I'll send someone home. The biggest exercise I do is, and everyone can do it at home if they want to, is I send people to go buy different kinds of lube, like
Okay.
an oil based, a silicone based, a water based.
Hmm.
And then I tell them, go home and play with yourself
Yeah.
and feel what the different lube feels like. And they're all
Mm.
really different.
Yes, they are.
And every time without fail, people come back and they're like, I spent 45. And I'm like, isn't that interesting that you were here because you thought
Hmm.
you ejaculated in 1 minute and here you
Yeah.
are going 45 minutes? Yes, because your intention was different,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And it's so quick. It's like, this is not even a thing you had to work on,
Right.
right?
Right.
So at some point with clients like that, we may make it to a point that they're like, well, I'd like to try it out with a person because they say it's different, do it by myself than with a person. They're right. It is
Yep.
different. And I will
Absolutely.
say it's also different doing it with a practitioner than
Yeah.
with a partner.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right. For sure.
But it is the next step, if you
Yeah.
will. It's like, no, I'm going to show you that you can tap into this mindset even when there's another person here. And I'm going
Hmm.
to help you because I'm going to remind you, where are you right now? Where's your energy?
Yep.
Right? Kind of the type of situation under which I would say, okay, let's do some body work.
Yeah.
Another time would be, for example, if someone's body has changed a lot, either
Mhm.
through trauma like a car accident
Mhm.
or cancer or surgery. A lot of people deal with a lot of scar, numbness,
Mhm.
tightness. And we work in scar tissue remediation, even
Okay.
internal scar tissue.
Mhm.
So maybe from childbirth, maybe from gender surgery,
Mhm.
right? These people have like genital scars.
Mhm.
I also deal with a lot of people who have curvature of the penis
Mhm.
from tightness of the scar from circumcision. And that
Okay.
can happen at any point. So
Yep.
I have people who will come to me and they are 50, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden their penises are at a 45-degree angle. They're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Whereas before it was fine, right? And they say, well, I had a circumcision when I was a baby. There's no way it's the scar. It's the scar.
Yeah.
Right. And we can get that fixed very quickly too with castor oil packs. I mean, honestly, none of the work that I do is anything too difficult.
Mhm.
Right. And I say this over and over. The kind of the hardest part of my job is that it's so simple
Mhm.
that sometimes it feels too simple.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what makes it work.
Yeah.
You're actually gonna do the work because it's not difficult.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I think your description of the body work and why it's helpful in going from that either zero to pleasure or pain to pleasure is so great. I mean, I think, it's not something that necessarily everybody knows is even available to them.
Yeah.
So I think this is such a great conversation because there are options to help outside of conventional medicine.
Mhm.
And sometimes conventional medicine, we don't get it right. And sometimes we need more of the holistic approach. And I
Yeah.
love combining the holistic and the conventional together because I think that gives us a really great treatment platform that we can kind of get all the sides of it. But I love what you're talking about and the fact that, you've taken the time to build this and get this confidence with this person and this relationship. And then it gets to that point where you're like, all right, let's do this next step with actually like some hands on working through it. I mean, how much that must give your patients and clients so much confidence than when they're on their own or with a new partner or something.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
there are times that you really need the space to be able to break down.
Mhm.
I have a client, for example, who has had cancer 3 times, starting when he
Mhm.
was a teenager, and a lot of his cancer has been genital, and the scars that he has are not necessarily something that he's ever really brought into his sexual
Mhm.
life because they feel like too painful. But
Mhm.
when we do body work, the scars are very much a part of it. And it's like
Mhm.
you have a different sensation here, right? Scars
Mhm.
feel different to
Yep.
me and to the person with the scar. And inviting the areas of our body that have demanded more attention historically into the realm of intimacy can feel disruptive in a way that is healing, but
Mhm.
also too vulnerable with a lover,
Yeah.
right? And so there are spaces like with me where that can be invited in and I can say, let's do some scar massage while we're here in
Mhm.
this space and see what that feels like. And interestingly, almost every single time people cry,
Mhm.
almost every single time. And there's this beautiful space for that, for like intimacy involving tears and
Yeah.
laughter and all of the messiness that is the human experience.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. What a unique area that you have found and how much help you are bringing to people. I love that. Sarah, how can people find you and be in touch with you and maybe even work with you?
Yeah, I have a website, Haven Space Coaching, Haven, havenspacecoaching.com, and I take clients virtually. Right now, I'm kind of on this journey to create some kind of package for people to be able to do at home with some of the lessons that I teach everyone. And that's going to make it a lot more accessible, I
Mhm.
think. They can follow me on TikTok or Instagram, Haven Space Coaching. I will warn you, though, that my TikTok was inspired by my children to tell me I had to do sex ed for kids and younger people because they don't know anything about
Yeah.
relationships. So it's out there. It's just like little tips. It's not
Yeah.
the nitty gritty of it, if you will. There is like certification entities. If you go to the Institute for the Study of Somatic Sex Education, you can search for practitioners in your area. If
Mm.
you, there's not a lot of us, there's only about 300 worldwide, but a lot of us are in the US. So if you happen to be in the US, then maybe there's someone close to you can work with. Um, if you want a sexological body worker, there's a lot of us too around, and it would be great to find someone in your area, even if it's not me. And I'm just going to plug this in there. I would encourage straight people to work with people of their own gender
Mm,
in sexual touch because it is a space where you can fully feel into yourself without
mm,
feeling chemistry or attraction
sure.
for your practitioner. And that sounds and feels really edgy, but I have peers that are men that are straight that are working with other straight men. And that work is beautiful and healing in a completely different way because the energy is so different. So I just want to plant the seed for that as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. This is amazing. And what a great conversation. And definitely some topics we don't talk about all the time on here that can really help people and open their eyes to different avenues for improving their sexuality and their sexual experiences. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. And
Yeah.
feel free to reach out, anybody, any of the listeners, or you yourself, Steph, if you have any questions or you have any other curiosities that I can help with.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Have a great week until we see you next time and go have some fun between the sheets. Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and go have some fun between the sheets.